Hello everyone, welcome to a new Adobe Live session. Today I have a very special guest with me, but before that I would like to say hello to our chat community, Simon, Sandrine, Andreas, Gareth. Remember everyone, we're live every day from 12 to 1, and if you are joining us on YouTube, do join us on behance.net/live so we can say hello to you and you can throw your questions for today's guest. So I have a very super talented guest with me today. You might have seen her work all over the internet. She's known with her bold, colorful style. She's a freelance illustrator and a motion designer based in Scotland. And today she will be showing us 5 illustration tips while working on a live illustration. Introducing Nuria Boj. Hi, Nuria.
Hi, Natalie. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. So excited to be here today with you.
Yes, same here. We're very excited to see what you're working on today, and most importantly, the tips that you have for us and for the community. Please feel free to introduce us a bit about your workflow and, introduce us to these amazing tips that you have for us.
Sounds great. Yeah. So I brought with me 5 tips of things I normally do in my illustration process that I really hope that people find useful and inspiring for their own process and work. And it has to do a little bit with everything from the composition of your illustration to the hard decisions of colors and how to add detail and find new varieties between light and shadows in the colors of your illustration. So I brought with me like an illustration to work today, and first of all, I guess I'll introduce what it's about and how I got inspired to sketch this out first. So probably like half of the country has been watching the Queen's Gambit on Netflix. Oh, yeah. And I've been just so inspired by the fashion, the set design. I was like, I definitely need to include some inspiration, even a little bit, onto this illustration. That would be nice.
I was also fascinated by the art direction on the series. If anyone haven't watched it yet, we invite you to watch it on Netflix. It's absolutely beautiful. So I guess you got inspired, like the objects that you drew today are inspired by the series and by the character.
A little bit, yeah. I think mostly it's going to be inspired by the color in terms of what I've been inspired by in the series. But I really enjoyed her ginger hair and all the tartan type of fabric pattern that they include on her dresses are magnificent. I love them. So you see, like on this sketch, actually, it doesn't start like this neat outlined. There is a little bit of, rough sketch before that. And actually, prior to that, I was thinking of doing something completely different in terms of pattern within the handbag. So it was like more like a texture in terms of like a mesh. But then after watching the series the other day, I was like, no, this is perfect spot for tartan pattern a little bit. So my sketches, like they normally look like this. I once had a teacher who was like, teaching everyone in the class about drawing. And because I didn't know very much, and I was like doing lots of lines, one after the other. He was like, Nuria, you have to, even though if it's just one line, if it has determination and you know what you're doing, it makes more value to your drawing than 1,000 lines put together. And like that stuck to me up until this day. So I tried to, with one line, get it done and see how it goes, which I think was a great exercise, to be honest.
Yeah.
So normally what I do for cleanup, I will just go over with the path tool, and I will just create like an outline with the brush that I have selected at that time. But yeah, so now that you know the illustration I'm going to be working, I think it would be great to jump first to the tips that I have for the illustration so that you can see it while I develop, hopefully towards a final illustration by the end of the stream. Let's hope. So my first tip was actually regarding composition. So I don't know if you see it very well. Maybe I should probably put the opacity a little bit higher just so you can see it. So on this illustration and in many of my personal illustrations, what I try to do is to give depth to the objects in the scene and to find like a subtle 2D, 3D environment and to play with shadows and lights at the end. So normally what I will keep in mind is to maybe have like a foreground object. Doesn't really, sometimes in this case it's quite big and oversized, but of course it can take other shapes what you put before on the front of the other objects. And then I will have like a middle ground. Here in this case I've decided to put the handbag just because I want it to be like the key centerpiece of the artwork. And then at the background, I've kept it quite simple so it doesn't distract with what's in front of it. I normally always add like bubbles and I don't know, like crazy circular shapes of my work. For some reason, I really enjoy it. So why not here too? And yeah, so normally this is what I have, like what I keep in mind on my work. Like here I have another example with a different illustration where I've pretty much used the same composition tip that I'm giving here. I mean, it's nothing special, but it's just really what I use on my work. I try to overlap objects. So for example, this is obstructing the sofa and it's creating that dimension because it's lifted up from the level where the character is sitting. And the same with the other objects in the background. They're a little bit further up, a little bit smaller and overlapping with the rest. And it just creates this journey and 3D dimension in the artwork.
Was that done during quarantine, the illustration?
This one actually was done last year, but yeah, I for some reason, it's one of those projects that you do, you're proud, but then you get busy and then forget to share. And I was like, you know what? This actually made a great example for today.
Exactly. And it's also proof that you can still do yoga while you're not doing quarantine. So yeah.
Exactly. I think she's like looking for that routine, to be honest. I think the routine has gone out the window a little bit.
I absolutely love it. And the colors, how do you find the colors? How do you choose each color? Do you get inspired by the day, or is there anything specific that you look for when you work on your illustrations?
So I think I guess like any artist, you have like a safe start in regards to colors. I find that I find like using pinks and pastels kind of to start with make me feel more comfortable with the process to start with, because I guess like many artists that at the start when you have to choose the colors, it's like overwhelming to see what works best. Sometimes you can know I really want to go for this vibe and have that feeling of warmth or this feeling of making it cold and dark. You can have a general idea sometimes, which is lucky because then you have some guidelines as to what to do at the start at least. If not, I would just try to stick with the colors that I know that works for my artwork, that are mostly blue and pink, and go from there. If I don't have like something set in mind before starting color.
Nice.
So I guess the following tip that I have is about the flow of your illustration. So I'm going to probably have to change the opacity here a little bit as well, just to make sure that everyone sees. So in my compositions, I tried to make like to be really important the flow of where your eye goes to first, which is something that's it's not only informed in the composition, it's also that you enhance with color later on. But I like to keep like one object to each side that draws your eye towards the entire composition. And for this illustration, for this sketch, I thought that actually having this square background, it will keep it more contained. And I also thought that to make it work into an Instagram type of square ratio, it could work quite nicely too. So yeah, this is normally the something I keep in mind in my illustration work, to have a flow from one object to the other, whether it's changing the scale, the dimensions, through applying color later on as well, and definitely in the composition. On this illustration as well, I kind of wanted like to draw the eye towards her face. So if it's the only place where I used red to keep the attention on her face, because she's also quite pastels in colors as well as the background, so it can get quite lost.
Nice. And in this way you create also some kind of balance in the composition as well. Like it becomes one block of interesting artwork.
Yeah, so it's kind of like finding like a busy spot where to put things that you want to look at, and then have like a breathing room at the opposite side. So just to make sure that you're not overwhelming your viewer and yourself while drawing.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's normally what I try to do. Sometimes you just do it without noticing, but I had to really look into my process to say, yeah, actually, I do this quite a lot. And following your question about color, I thought that, the best tip I can give about color is to just explain how I do it, and hopefully inspire others to just try it out. I'm not like a big pro at understanding theory color, but I do know that complementary colors make a great start for my illustration work, because they create not only vibrancy, and if you want, you can take it like quite saturated and still have that contrast, but it also gives like a more playful approach to my illustrations. And then I never like stick to two colors. I find it really hard to just stick to two colors. I don't know why, but what I do tend to do is, like, after I've chosen the two primary colors that I would like to use, I will just quickly have another variant of that color, just to make sure that for this part that's going to be more shadow, it's going to have like this darker tone of the same color, and have a bit more playfulness to it. But definitely decide which one it's going to be more prominent in your illustration, and then use the other one strategically to draw the attention to the specific object in the scene. Otherwise, you can, of course, use a bit more monochromatic type of color palette, which is something I also can start with, but I never stick to. I always had like so many other colors, but it's also an option.
Yeah, that's the beauty of improvising. So
yeah, exactly. I think I really believe that illustration, it's all about improvising and kind of feeling how you feel the artwork is taking you. You sometimes can have a plan, and it makes it easier to start with, but it can also, be hard. But also meditation type of practice, I think.
of course, yeah. I mean, most of the amazing illustrators we hosted on Adobe live streams, they start with a plan. Like you always have to have a plan, a basic sketch that you have to follow, but it's always, you change your mind during the process, or it's like you said, it's all about improvising.
Yeah, it's like it's just such a visual practice. Like I really try to be able to have it in my mind before I draw it, just because then it's like a great practice of translating what's here with my hand, and it just, after repetition it just becomes easier. And yeah, that's what I tend to do.
Amazing. And now the fourth tip.
The fourth tip, yeah. So the first tip is about lights and shadows. So I'm a big fan of adding light and shadow with other colors in the scene. But so this works also to find your color palette. And so if you want to start just with maybe one or two colors, then when you apply the lights and shadows, you discover other colors that you maybe didn't think about, but they actually work quite nicely. So the way I do it, it's one of the ways I do it. I'll do it from the beginning. It's pretty much just here on the color wheel, select like a warm type of light or a colder type of light. Maybe if I want it warmer, I will go more towards the red. And if I want it like a little bit colder, we'll go more towards the green. But I would just select like a yellow, and then I will just draw on top, like really badly at the moment. But just so that you can see it. And then I will just play with the blending modes. Oh. 1 second.
And it just blends in with the background.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. So what I've done is like blended with the background just to make sure that let me see first. So I fill it up, and then I will just drag and drop and select overlay. Mm-hmm. And then this way it will create these other really interesting combinations for the lighting that maybe didn't think about. And then I will do exactly the same for the shadows. So instead of selecting a yellow, I will select purple, just to make the shadows a little bit more interesting, because I also tend to use black, a lot of black on maybe a few outlines or in a few really strong shadows. But having these mixed, it really helps to bring depth to my work as well. So I'm just going to quickly do this, like the bucket tool, and roughly fill it up just to get the idea across. And then, yeah, so for this one, I mostly use multiply and then just drop the opacity, just so that it gives like this nice balance, playfulness with light and shadow.
Amazing. And we have Sandrine here asking, it might not be super related to colors, but I think it can answer her question. She asked if like you also play with the sharpness and blurriness to hint at perspective in your drawings. Do you use colors by using that, or is there a specific tool that you use on Photoshop to play with that?
Yeah, I do play a lot with blurriness, and how glossy or roughness or rough is the surface of an object. So it's kind of like thinking 3D almost. I do like to just pretty much go to filter, and then let me see if I select a layer. And I mostly just use the blur features from Photoshop. And that will be, sometimes I will go from normal Gaussian blur to motion blur. I think that motion blur gives like that more dynamic feeling to the shadow, like more spread out sometimes depending on where you put it. So it creates like blur here, maybe more sharp here, and then blur here, if that makes sense. And that also really helps to bring volume, to your objects. Mm-hmm. So, and it's really addictive, to be honest. Once I start like blurring something out, I find like 1,031 sucks later, just pretty much adding more blurriness to it.
Have you tried the path blur?
Yes, I tried fast blur as well. I think the fast blur, isn't fast blur more on After Effects rather than Path blur. Oh yeah. No, I haven't tried that one. No.
Well, oh, we also have a suggestion to try the field blur. Does that exist, Sean? Is that real? I haven't tried it myself.
I don't think I have either. Field blur.
It's in gallery, but just maybe you can experiment with it later on. I hear it's pretty interesting to see the results when you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll definitely check it out. I probably didn't notice.
So yeah, that's really interesting to see. And then we have the fifth tip, which is based on shapes, I guess, more on shapes.
Shaped lights and shadows. So pretty much like related to the question of the, having blurred in your lights and shadows, they do create a lot of volume and they make your objects feel more realistic. But if you like plan to keep it just very 2D and not blur at all, also something really fun that you can do is instead of like approaching your lights and shadows to, instead of being like flat and very geometric, to warp them around to create a bit more like the volume and surface of the objects that you're drawing. So that's something that I do a lot. Like you can, for example, you don't even have to have it to be this type of shape. Like if you want to feel like the light is a flower or something like that, then you can totally do that too. And it just creates a bit more interesting, something more interesting to your artwork. So if you want to like add like, I don't know, a flower is coming from here and that's going to be your light. It's playing around with the shapes and you can create volume, but making the lights shapes that you wouldn't feel possible unless you're like really creative about it and think differently. But this is something I do all the time and it's really fun.
Kind of adds a bit of realistic feel as well.
Yeah, it does. I studied 3D like when I was a junior motion designer, and I think since then it's like I've always tried to see how far I can take my illustration work sometimes. Yeah.
That's so interesting, like moving from 3D to flat illustrations.
Yeah, it's I think it's just because I've always been like really eager to learn whatever I had the chance to at the time. Like I thought I was going to be a graphic designer, but then I'm now an illustrator, something I never thought I was good enough to be. So it's and then I jumped from graphic design to animation, and that led me to the illustration world, just because I wanted my animations to look that bit better, because I didn't know, if I didn't learn illustration, I didn't know how else to make it look better apart from moving better.
Yeah, exactly. Which, we had from the chat, Harpreet asking, how did you start as an illustrator? And that, it's so interesting to see how you started. And do you have any advice that you can give for, young graduates starting as graphic designers, perhaps?
Yeah, of course. So I think experience is just so valuable. So I found that I learned the most when I was doing my internship, and I was like spending 2 weeks with people that was living and working every day of doing what I thought I wanted to do one day. I did realize that I preferred animation at the end, but I think for any graduates, just keep eager to learn and to find the experience that you need for your professional career, and just strive forward to getting that.
Well, yeah, that's really, it's not just for young designers, but it's also for everyone that's starting out their career and they want to get better at it. It's really nice to hear that, so thank you.
No worries, it's a pleasure. I think we've all been there at the beginning, so it's really valuable when someone gives you a chance to see what you're made of and learn, and give you the chance to learn. It's really valuable.
An additional advice from Tim from the chat: don't wear, or actually wear 31 pairs of socks at once. No, don't try to do that. Actually, sorry. Do not try to wear 31 pairs of socks at once. It's not healthy.
I know. I should hold myself.
Because you were previously talking about that, and that was just like, yeah, it was just funny to mention.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see, the process of the illustration that you're gonna do right now. Wow, love these colors. Yeah, definitely. If you do watch the show on Netflix, you will understand the reference here.
A little bit. Yeah, it just her I've just been like obsessed since I saw her. I'm like, I definitely want to try that haircut now.
And I had someone actually asking from the chat if you usually use a picture as a reference before you illustrate, or is it all like purely from your mind, or how does that work?
I think it really depends of how sure I feel about an idea before getting into the sketch. I definitely think that it's really valuable that you find reference, like especially for characters, for poses, for, drawing more complex things like hands that can get quite tricky. So it really depends. Sometimes I'm just like driven by the flow of what I think it's going to work and get carried away. But other times I do need a reference. Like, for example, the illustration that I showed previously, this one I did need a reference for the type of furniture, because there is no way that I can be this creative with furniture, which is something that I've not done that much on my career. And
that illustration is not based on a photo of a woman, based, like, you added all these elements together.
Yeah, I just simply like did like a search of furniture that I would love to in my house, and then just kind of reference that a little bit, and just really help me to get creative, which is what you need to get started. So as you can see here, like what I've been mentioning about the colors, I've pretty much decided that I wanted the warmer tones to be the primary, the main color or sentiment of the illustration. I wanted to feel like something autumn-like and also inspired by her hair. And I then use blue, which is a complementary color of the orange to create the attention on the handbag. And normally what I do is, before I create this kind of detail based of color, I will do a really, really rough type of illustration with color on top, just so that I can make all the decisions about color before getting into the details. Probably makes me take double the time on an illustration, but I just really like to have every decision taken, and then just have fun with the development of the illustration.
I love how you say, just roughly, I'm gonna color this, and for me it looks perfect.
Yeah, I have to like keep myself accountable of, Nuria, you are starting to add too much detail stuff now. So I don't blame you. Like, I sometimes get also carried away with just the rough color paths. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just going to start basically adding detail to this base of color, and just so that you can see how I get going from this stage, and yeah, see how far I get.
I love it. And I also know that you worked in animation, Nuria. Or you still work in animation. How is that for you? Like, from going from illustration to animating artworks, is that a challenge? Do you use certain tools and Adobe softwares that can help?
So I absolutely love animation. I think one of the most rewarding feelings of designing for animation is then seeing even like when you collaborate in projects with other professionals, see how they take your work and they animate it, and it's just like, boof, mind blown. It's amazing. It's the best feeling ever. But I do sometimes also get myself to get the chance to do animation myself, which is really fun. I like to like do small gifts for things, like maybe they are for a website, or maybe they are just for fun, and I maybe get to also do frame by frame, which is, it's pretty much like drawing, but drawing many times the same thing. So I guess, yeah, that's why I like it quite a lot.
Amazing. So now we're creating a new layer.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be trying my best to do like a tartan type of pattern here in the back. And normally what I do a lot is just to use the paths tab to fill my colors. And if I want to like keep like the texture from the brush on the edges, what I will do is just simply click here this stroke circle bottom here, and then it will just like add the texture. But of course my brush is like too giant here at the moment, so I'm just going to make it more subtle. And yeah, and then I'm just going to change opacity and create like a blend of strokes. Yeah.
We have a pretty busy chat today.
Yeah, oh, that's great to hear. Hope everyone's well.
We have some fans of yours as well, you know, praising your illustrations and colors.
Oh, that's so nice. That makes me happy.
Look at the butterfly.
So maybe here, I'm just going to try my best. Have you ever visited Scotland?
Oh no, I would love to. Not yet.
It's absolutely a must.
Because you're based in Edinburgh, right?
Yeah, well, we just kind of moved to just outside of Edinburgh, to a small town. But yeah, I've lived in Edinburgh for quite a few years, and it's always a pleasure to go back and visit and see all the architecture. It's just so nice.
It's on my bucket list, definitely. Because I know that you're originally Spanish. Did you move recently to Scotland, or is it your hometown right now?
So Scotland is my home. I'm originally from Spain, but I'm really happy to say that I call Scotland my home as well. Just because I'd spent like many years here, and I've studied, worked, made friends, and just I feel like Scotland, it's where I have to be now. But I'm originally from Spain, and I'm really also looking forward to go back and see family and you know, enjoy food. Just, of course, one of the greatest things about going to Spain, just getting all the food.
Yeah, anytime during the day, if you want some tapas, you can do that. I mean, unfortunately, this situation not so easy, but yeah, once everything is back to normal, yeah, it is great. It's a great way to come back.
Yeah, I always feel like so relaxed when I go back to Spain. It's just, I don't know, it has like a general vibe, or maybe it's me just going with that vibe. But I feel like everyone is just so chill out, so calm.
I mean, we have what we call the siesta here, because I'm based in Barcelona. So if you have a siesta, then of course you're gonna be chilled like most of the day.
Yeah, that's such a tradition, I guess, that I've lost with the years. But sometimes the body keeps calling for a siesta time.
Which brings me to my question. Actually, we see that you're very inspired. Like most of your work is inspired by nature, and you also focus a lot on character design. And I believe being in Scotland, you cannot beat that these vibes you're getting every time you go for a walk, or the nature, and all these beautiful houses. It's true I haven't been there, but I've seen pictures, and I guess is this from where you get your inspiration from?
Yes, I absolutely love, how close to nature I can be when I'm here, and how easy it is to just write 30 minutes maybe and just be in countryside and enjoying quietness and nature. So it does definitely, I think, it is a reference in my work. I'm very drawn to drawing things that calm my mind. I think. I mean, because of what I do, most of my client work tends to be quite diverse. So I tend to like lots of things that, and have to adapt to styles that maybe aren't truly my personal style, but it really adds to the experience that I get to do, that I get to have doing illustration. But with my personal work, I definitely, anytime, any chance I have, there must be like a flower or type of reference to nature, and yeah, just something that I truly, truly enjoy.
Wow. So I see we put a pattern now.
Yeah, a little bit.
Is it already blended in with the background?
Sorry, say again?
Is the layer already blended with the background, or is that like the final step that you're gonna do?
So at the moment I've just been like adding layers. So here I've used like some black, and then I've just been like changing the opacity to kind of create like an overlap type of pattern, which is the best way I can think of doing the pattern at the moment. Maybe there is like a better way that I'll discover later on, but
it's your own trick, so that works fine.
Yeah, I find like, I get to always try things I've not done before, which is each illustration. And I think that's also key to keeping engaged with, your love for illustrating.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I just start like picking colors to where I see they will work. So then I would just like pass through and do it. Before I used to like try to draw it freehand, but I spend like so much time trying to redo the same stroke. I'm like, I think I just use paths. It will work out better. And some people actually think that I do my work in vectors, but I actually don't. I think it's just because I work in big scale, large format type of images, that when you like size it down to maybe Instagram, you don't see the texture of the brush and feels quite vector like.
Yeah, it's just like a way of working, I guess. But did you ever? I mean, I'm guessing you did use the Illustrator app as well for some clients, for example, or is it just purely Photoshop?
No, I tend to, because I work with animation studios most of the time, a specific style will be much easier for the animator if it's produced with vectors. And me myself knowing about animation, I also see that it makes total sense, and it's gonna make their life way easier than if it was Photoshop. But I do think that I can get the most creative when I'm working on Photoshop, just because it brings that rough, artistic, organic approach to doing your drawing, changing things around quickly, that I really, really like.
Oh, and we have Sandrine here. She would like to recommend you a website to build your own tartan from a set of colors and weave. You can download it. You can download the result as a pattern. So that could work out with the bag that you're designing now. The website.
That'd be amazing.
The website is plademaker.com. We will forward it to you after the stream.
Yes, please.
So much, Sandrine. That was very sweet of you. That also might be helpful for the viewers as well, if they want to try out on working on patterns or different colors.
Yeah, thank you so much. I never thought that there could be an app for that, but probably should have looked it up. But thank you so much.
But I love the fact that you created from scratch as well. it must be challenging, you know, to follow all the lines, and I don't know, because yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they can get so complex. Like here, I kept it quite simple, let's be honest. But you know, it can get like you can use so many colors, and they're like everywhere here in Scotland as well. So I should probably know more, but but yeah, they're like I think some of them like they represented clans of back in the days, so represented families and things like that. So it's quite interesting. There's some stories behind some of the patterns as well.
Nice.
So some of the other things that I do, apart from like using the path to kind of fill up the shapes, like here I've done it quite roughly, but another way to do it, which I learned from an artist called Sarah Beth, that she really kindly shared in her Instagram account, and I've been like using quite a lot since I learned, is to create like an action for filling up the shapes. So I don't quite like know how she created the option of how I recreated it either, but you know, it's possible that you can have an option to select this and then it fills the color with what you have selected. And it doesn't tend to like leave like a border once you've done it. Sometimes it can happen like if you're working with a really rough detail brush, it can, when you try to fill with the bucket, it can leave like a line and then you have to go over, but this way you can go about it and fix it.
It's so cool. And so which tip are we using? I believe we're doing the third one, which is color. We're working with colors now and shadows.
Yeah, right? I probably like this would be like more like adding the details and then I'm trying to like go into the lighting, but I think I'm going to start using what I mentioned before about adding light. So using like a yellow type of color and then going about creating maybe some light over here. And then if you see like the way I approach is that it could be like a straight kind of reflection, but then instead of doing that, kind of just warp it and create something that feels a bit more organic. That still adds like a bit of volume, and then I will just fill it up and overlay. And actually, I probably, just so that it goes over the pattern, I'm just gonna click Control and on top of the layer to make the selection of this layer, and I'm going to create a mask on that light, and then I'm just going to drop it on top of the pattern, so it creates something a bit more interesting over there.
Wow. I love that it's not like directly shadow. It works so well with the composition.
Yeah, it's honestly a really easy way to discover colors that you've never thought before. And, you know, add that extra bit of, you know, extra thing to make it a bit more interesting. It's just by using the same color for lights and the same colors for shadow on the illustration. In some way, I think it helps it to feel cohesive between the composition. So it's a really good trick. I think I use it a lot.
It's so cool. And Nuria, so when you get a requested job from a client, I believe, you know, sometimes they know what they want, you know, they tell you, okay, this is the brief, we want this type of illustration. But did you have any cases where you also had to be involved in the decision making? Because I know that you also help creatives reach original ideas. Did you also ever get involved, you know, in decision making and deciding how we want the illustration to be, rather than, you know, knowing how it's going to be from the beginning?
Yeah, so it really depends. Most of the time, it's a collaboration between the team. If I'm working, for example, for a motion design studio, it would be like a collaboration between them and the artists that they've taken on board for the project. But other times, if I do also work directly with clients, and in that way, I do have more art direction, I suppose, on the decision making of where to take a project, how to animate it, what's the best approach, what's feasible with the time, and things like that. So I do a bit of everything, but I have to say that I do really enjoy collaborating with others, because sometimes you get to ideas that you've never thought before, or they give you like a piece of feedback that you haven't thought or tried before, and then you are like, oh, this looks so much better. So it's also really fun that way.
Yeah, sometimes it's a two-way as well. Like it makes it easier probably for the end results.
Yeah, it does. And at the same time, when you're freelance and you're working by yourself, you kind of like appreciate being surrounded by other people on a project, even though it's like still like to the distance, but it's quite nice to feel part of something as well.
Yeah.
But of course, it's also important to learn how to do it all yourself, and to know where to take the project, because it also helps when you're working with other people to give ideas and suggestions of how you think this could work, and it becomes a bit more valuable for the entire team overall, I think.
Amazing. So now we're also adding the shadows from the back.
Yeah, that's correct. So I normally do like a combination of this type of shading, just purple and multiply, but I will also like add details in pure black just to make it like a bit more contrasty, I think. So I will just imagine that this flower is casting shadow somehow on this leather bag. So I'm just going to draw the shape of the flower around here, maybe another bit here, and that will do for this shadow.
Wow.
So yeah, most of my work takes place in this process, which is like lights and shadows all the time. I feel like I've said it like 1,000 times already, but I'm so sorry. But
it's one of your, it's one of your tricks. It's what makes your work pop up. So it's very fascinating also to see you working with path and the path tool. Yeah, and in the end, it complements your work. I know that not a lot of like flat illustrations focus on that specific aspect, but yeah, I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. It's like I think like the more illustration I do, the more you can really have a sense of what you enjoy doing the most while you illustrate. And I've never been like I've never pressured myself like to stick to the same color palette, to have it all consistent, or to just draw the same type of character all the time, because I think like when you're starting your career, I've been only like 2 years freelancing. I think it's really important to try and experiment with things and find what's that you like doing, and see how you can bring your own self into your illustrations. And that's how I think that is the most relaxed way of you'll figure it out the more you do it, sort of thing.
I totally agree with you. And we have over 10 minutes left. Did we cover all the tips?
Yeah.
Are we gonna talk about the composition in the end as well?
Yes, so thank you for telling me about the time. I get driven away.
I just kind of like slipped it in.
Yeah. So Yeah, I totally knew that probably I wasn't gonna be able to completely finish an illustration because it takes me a time. It takes me a little bit of time to figure
No,
out
of
things
course. And then
normally.
also like this reminder will also, help with our chat community. If they have any questions, please let us know so I can uh, tell them to Nuria today. I know a lot of people here are, they're really enjoying the stream. We have a very big compliment actually from Angus. He said that you're very calm and organized, and it's really easy for them to watch you working, live. So yeah.
Oh, so glad to hear. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, like I don't name my layers, but normally for client work I do. Like I try to keep it as organized as I could.
Yeah,
So
your
yeah.
workflow is very smooth as well. I'm sure that and now we have an hour of stream, but I'm sure during your regular workflow, you take your time. You decide on where to put the layers and where to put these lines. Yeah, I think it's really nice to see that.
Yeah, it's like finding I guess like I found the sweet spot of how like working which comes to like doing as many illustrations as you can and try as many things as you can. But it's quite nice when you find like that spot where you feel comfortable and sure about your process. And also when you have to explain your process to other people is when you learn a lot as well. Because you have to like be aware of what you do normally. And it's also really really good for me to be able to share it with everyone today. So um, it's a great opportunity for everyone.
Nice. And I'm sure for some creatives, you ask them, "How's your process of working?" And they're like, "Process? What's that?" Because sometimes there's no process. Like there's always like ups and downs, or you go back and forth. So
Yeah, exactly. And because you're not really talking to anyone while you illustrate, or at least I don't. I just like stay quiet looking at my screen for many hours, like I
oh,
guess many people. But I'm not used to like talking while I draw, so it's really good to be able to at least put what I do or what I have in my mind into words. It really helps me a lot as well to be
yeah.
able to do that. So yeah, I've taken this illustration, this file. It's not much, but kind of the idea comes across of how I start like adding shapes to things and creating volume. And if you can see from the rough sketch, like I've pretty much like kept the blues for the back and just kept like everything else with warm colors. And what I will do is probably show you how it probably looked finished, and so that you can see the difference of me spending like probably 4 hours 4 hours down the line in this process. So this would be the finished illustration, and you can see
Cool.
from the rough color that some things have changed because you don't set on stone the things that you're going to do from start to finish. When you do illustration, you always have wiggle room around to change things. And I thought, I think this kind of blue green color will look better for the vibe that I'm going for. So
We can clearly see the bubble as well that you spoke about in the beginning. You love to add bubbles in your work. So or in the background.
yeah, they're just so much fun. I don't know why, but they just like feed every single purpose and project. So I'll just use them. But what
And is there a tip on how to create that effect? I mean, I personally don't know how to do that. And the bubble effect, did you add something, or was it just also purely a color treatment?
Oh, I can show you. So it's like a combination of of like many layers. So some of them, like maybe if I put it down to the basics. So this would be like the very basic to start making it like a bit more 3D dimensional. Like, so I will add like a darker gradient in the middle and then create like a rim edge lighting just so that it makes it like this when the surface curves, you see light reflected, which is called Fresnel, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was how it's called. And then I just kind of start adding what someone in the chat mentioned before about adding blurred shapes into the object, and that really helps to make it pop and create volume. And then just to make it more interesting, I just like add different colors and blending modes. I think this was like a pink on multiply, and then I just kind of took this white splash from the background on top of the bubble as well, and they just started like creating shapes. You know, the shapes that I mentioned to warp them to create volume. That's where it has been applied here. Then I just create like, as also has I mentioned, like, you know, put funny stuff, funny shapes and your objects, and you know, it's always like really fun.
Nice.
So if you like contrast, if you compare the final illustration with the rough color, you will see that here, for example, one decision I took is that this was blending too much with what was happening in this area. So because I chose the blue to be the main color to create contrast with the bag, I decided to bring that color to here just so that we can see better this moth-like creature.
So nice. I love it. I love the colors. Will you be posting that later on Instagram so we can look at it more in detail?
Yeah, definitely. I sometimes like to do zooms of like my illustrations and crop them up in like funny frames, just so that people can see the detail closer.
Definitely. That's what we would love to see. Yeah, so for those who would like to check out Nuria's work, please head over to the Instagram link that Tim just shared on the chat. Yeah, this illustration is very dreamy, definitely. Do you have any, we have less than 5 minutes left. Do you have any tips that you would like to give out, Nuria? I know that you previously gave up a tip for young designers, but do you have a general tip that you would like to give us, especially in those hard times? How can we confront these? You know, just throw us some inspirational quote or something.
Well, I'm terrible for quotes, but you know, I guess the primary thing I would love people to do is to be easy on themselves and take care of themselves and the people that they love. And you know, remember that illustrations should be like your passion, and it shouldn't feel like, you know, a really stressful job, that you have to enjoy what you do the most you can, and just, you know, dive deep into what you like doing and share with the world.
Thank you so much, Nuria. We really enjoyed the stream. We loved seeing how you're working with the colors and everything, and hopefully we will have you back soon with us. Thank you so much for sharing your work and your tips with us today.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you so much.
So yeah, I want to say a huge thank you also to our chat community today. It's been pretty busy actually. So thank you guys for, you know, joining us, for all our viewers. Please remember, if you still want to keep on the conversation, do join us on Discord. You will find the link on the chat in a few seconds. But yeah, remember, we're live every day from 12 to 1. I can't wait to see you guys again. Thank you again, Nuria. Have a beautiful day, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.